WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul, 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, online at wadr.org and on YouTube and Facebook at WADR. First, our top stories. Senegal secures roughly $35 million financing from African Development Bank to rebuild public trust amid a debt crisis. Pressure group in the Gambia urges President Adama Barrow to publicly rule out a third-term bid.
We see things are not favoring Gambians. We are in here for Murutata. Let him step down and give it to somebody that can go ahead with the administration.
Sierra Leone's Bar Association condemns police for disrupting its leadership elections.
Access the main hall because we have our AGM and we have been informed that there is an order from above that we should not access the hall. If this is what we want, Mr. Government,
And Ghana's opposition MPP announces nationwide democracy under attack protest after accusing the government of undermining the rule of law. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Abdullahi Hassan.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. This edition of Newslink begins with Senegal as the country receives financial backing from the African Development Bank. The support seeks to help Dakar rebuild trust in its public finances amid a debt crisis. The bank's approval of 20 billion CFA francs, roughly $35 million, will fund reforms focused on better public finance management, increasing domestic revenue, and enhancing transparency. The envelope arrives as Senegal continues negotiations with the International Monetary Fund (IMF) for a new lending arrangement following the discovery of over $13 billion in previously hidden public debt. The African Development Bank emphasizes that this funding highlights its dedication to backing Senegal's economic reforms and laying the groundwork for stronger and more resilient growth. Still in Senegal, authorities are strengthening the capacity of law enforcement officers to better respond to cases involving children and ensure that their rights are protected during legal procedures. The initiative comes amid ongoing efforts to improve child protection mechanisms, particularly in areas such as the prevention of child trafficking and the handling of cases involving vulnerable minors. Judicial police officers are receiving training on child protection and children's rights. Veronica Njai reports.
The training aims to strengthen the ability of officers to identify possible violations, interact appropriately with children during investigations, and ensure that the best interests of the child are taken into account throughout legal procedures. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights says it is supporting Senegal's efforts to integrate human rights principles into police training programs. Benjamin Morio is the Deputy Regional Representative for West Africa.
The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights provides its full support to the Senegalese state and works closely with the National Human Rights Commission and the Police Academy to ensure that human rights are integrated into police training programs and curricula so that officers can better protect children's rights. It is also important for them to understand the challenges faced by children, which are not only legal issues but also involve psychosocial dimensions.
The United Nations says strengthening the capacity of law enforcement officers is a key part of ensuring that children are not only protected by the law, but are also treated with dignity and care throughout the justice process.
Veronica Njai reporting.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We're live online at wadr.org and on YouTube and Facebook at WADR. Newslink continues, this time taking us to the Gambia, where a pressure group is raising concerns over growing speculation that President Adama Barrow could seek a third term in the December 2026 presidential election. The civic movement Gambia for Third Gambia for Term Limits has renewed its call for the president to publicly rule out another bid, insisting that presidential term limits are a matter of democratic principle rather than politics. From Banjul, Rose Samara Cates reports.
The Gambia for Term Limit, in collaboration with the No to Third Term campaign, says the debate over presidential term limit should be treated as a matter of national interest and democratic principle rather than a political competition. Speaking at the event, the group urged that leaders committed to the country's future should support peaceful transition of power. They said President Adama Barrow should choose to support another candidate from his party instead of seeking another term. Nafali Jabate, one of the organizers, called on President Barrow to step aside and allow new leadership to emerge.
You are not in the favor of the Gambian people, but you are in favor of your party. So, which is we? This is why we see things are not favoring Gambians. We are in here for Morotata. Let him step down and give it to somebody that can go ahead with the administration. To be very candid, we are not happy. Definitely, we are not happy.
The campaign comes amid growing debate over President Adama Barrow's political future ahead of the December 2026 presidential election. Questions over the possible third-term bid have intensified following the ruling National People's Party's recent alliance with the Gambia Democratic Congress, one of the country's major opposition parties, last week. The development has fueled further discussions amongst political observers about the directions of the next election and whether President Barrow will seek to remain in office beyond his current mandate. For WADR, Rose Samara Cates, Banjul.
Meanwhile, the Gambia Bar Association has filed a case before the Supreme Court challenging President Adama Barrow's appointment of ADM Mufal as the country's Chief Justice. The legal challenge follows earlier objections by the association, which had urged the president to reconsider the appointment, arguing that Fall did not meet the constitutional requirements outlined under Section 139 of the Constitution. Despite those concerns, President Barrow proceeded with the appointment and swore in E.D. Fall as Chief Justice last week. The Bar Association says the decision to seek judicial review is aimed at defending constitutional compliance and safeguarding the supremacy of the Constitution. Abdullahi Fati, Secretary General of the Gambia Bar Association, will join us in the second half of the news for more. In the meantime, we head to Sierra Leone for a developing legal battle between the Bar Association and the state after the National Police sealed off the venue of its annual general meeting in Freetown, the capital. The action forced the indefinite suspension of leadership elections and locked out hundreds of lawyers from across the country. The association has condemned the move as an unlawful interference, insisting that no lawful court order was presented to justify the police action. The association says the disruption threatens the integrity of one of the country's most important professional institutions. Augustine Colley has more.
The Sierra Leonean police said the action was a preventive security measure taken in response to security concerns surrounding the event. However, the Bar Association rejected the explanation, saying no court order was presented to justify preventing members from accessing the venue. The fallout from the incident has already led to the resignation of the association's public relations officer, Africa Manda.
Access the main hall because we have our AGM and we have been informed that there is an order from above that you should not access the hall. It's good for the goose. If you want Martina at all costs, if this is what you want, Mr. Government,
The incident comes amid an ongoing dispute within the Sierra Leonean Bar Association over its electoral process and internal governance. Ahead of the suspended AGM, a High Court had directed the incumbent executive to publish a verified voters list and release audited financial statements. The matter was later taken to the Supreme Court, deepening divisions among members of the legal profession. Meanwhile, Attorney General and Minister of Justice Alpha Cisse has denied any involvement in the police deployment. With the current executive's mandate set to expire on August 18, the Bar Association has called an extraordinary general meeting for August 6 to consider the establishment of a caretaker body that would guide the organization until new elections are held.
Augustine Coley reporting there. In Guinea, human rights organizations are raising concerns over the future of the trial into the September 28, 2009 stadium massacre, warning that recent developments could undermine efforts to deliver justice for victims. The International Federation for Human Rights, the Guinean Organization for the Defense of Human Rights and Citizens, and the Association of Victims, Parents and Friends of September 28 are calling on authorities to ensure the continuation of the legal process, the holding of the appeal trial, and proper compensation for victims. Christopher Ticho tells us more.
2 years after several senior Guinean officials were convicted of crimes against humanity over the September 28, 2009 massacre, human rights organizations are warning that the progress achieved through the trial is now at risk. In a statement published on August 3, FIDH, OGDH and AVIPA pointed to several developments they say could affect the judicial process, including the presidential pardon granted to former junta leader Musa Dadis Camara, the death in detention of Claude Pivi and Abubakar Jakite, also known as Tumba, as well as the recent acquittal of Colonel Bienvenu Lamar, who was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General. The organizations say these decisions have raised concerns as several appeals remain pending. They also expressed concern over the lack of clarity surrounding the organization of the appeal process and the challenges facing victims seeking compensation. FIDH, OGDH, and AVIPA are urging Guinean authorities to protect the integrity of the judicial process, guarantee victims' rights to truth, justice, and reparations, and ensure the case is completed in line with international standards.
A report filed in by WADR's Conakry correspondent Cheno Alpha Ibrahima Baldi and presented by Christopher Aticho. Let's take one more report from the Manu River Union, precisely in Liberia, where a controversy is unfolding following an investigation into recent drug seizures that implicated sections of the local media. The Press Union of Liberia, PUL, has given the government 7 days to produce evidence backing allegations that some media outlets received money from a drug cartel or face legal action. The ultimatum was issued after journalists and media professionals met at the union's headquarters in Monrovia and unanimously resolved to authorize the PUL leadership to pursue legal redress, describing the government's claims as baseless and damaging to the credibility of the Liberian press. From Monrovia, Abraham Parker reports.
Inspector General Greco Coleman claimed that investigators had verified and established that a drug cartel channeled money to sections of the Liberian media in an attempt to influence popular narratives surrounding the country's largest cocaine seizure. But the Press Union of Liberia says the government has failed to produce any evidence to support the allegation. The union urges that the claims undermine public confidence in the media, damage the reputation of journalists, and could expose media practitioners to unnecessary risks. PUL President Julius Kanoba says the UN's response is not intended to obstruct the government's fight against drug trafficking, but to protect the credibility of the media and uphold professional standards. Kanoba maintains that if authorities have credible evidence against any media institution, it should be made public instead of making bold allegations against the press as a whole. The UN also says the Inspector General's remarks should not go unchallenged, warning that such claims risk shifting public attention away from ongoing scrutiny over alleged links between drug trafficking networks and security and government officials. With the one-week deadline now in place, attention is turning to whether the government will substantiate the allegations or face illegal action from Liberia's umbrella media body. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, online at wadr.org, and on YouTube and Facebook at WADR. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Senegal secures roughly $35 million financing from African Development Bank to rebuild public trust amid a debt crisis. Pressure group in the Gambia urges President Adama Barrow to publicly rule out a third-term bid. Sierra Leone's Bar Association condemns police for disrupting its leadership elections. Still in the news, Ghana's opposition MPP announces nationwide democracy under attack protest after accusing the government of undermining the rule of law. We also have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Bringing you the facts beyond the headlines from Monrovia, Liberia. This is Abraham Parker. Stay tuned to WADR 94.9 FM Dakar.
In Ghana, the main opposition New Patriotic Party, NPP, is mobilizing supporters for a nationwide protest, warning that the country's democratic institutions are facing increasing pressure. The opposition accuses the John Mahama government of using the country's justice system to favor his party, the National Democratic Congress, NDC, while targeting the opposition. The demonstration, dubbed Democracy Under Attack, is scheduled for Thursday, August 6, with organizers accusing the government of actions they say threaten democratic governance and the rule of law. Henry Nana Boake is the national organizer of the opposition MPP.
The essence of this demonstration is the selective justice we are witnessing, interference with our judiciary, repressive and onerous bail conditions being slapped on members of the opposition, and the fact that today, as we speak, democracy is under attack, suppression of free speech, criminalization of free speech. We cannot witness the fact that our democracy is dying. And this is not what President Mahama promised. President Mahama cannot support over a nation that over the years we've been tapped as the beacon of democracy. And today, we are lacking behind on all fronts. So we intend to stage this mammoth demonstration to express our dissatisfaction, to press home some demands that democracy is the way to go. So President Mahama and the NDC cannot suppress our democracy. Thursday, 7th of August, in the morning, 5 a.m., we gather in front of the Supreme Court. We'll present the first petition at the Supreme Court, and then we'll move straight in front of the streets. Then we will just move straight to Jubilee House to present the other petition. There will be a last petition that will be sent to Parliament House that will delegate the leadership in Parliament and some leaders of our party to present that petition. But we are going to hold this mammoth demonstration, democracy under attack.
The voice of Henry Nana Boake, national organizer of the opposition MPP party in Ghana. In Nigeria, coastal erosion and ocean surges are threatening communities' livelihoods and infrastructure along the country's shoreline. Experts warn that climate change, rising sea levels, and human activities are accelerating the loss of coastal land, calling for stronger intervention to protect vulnerable communities. From Abuja, Usman Umar reports.
Communities along Nigeria's coastline are losing land as ocean surges and erosion continues to destroy homes, farmlands and infrastructure. Environmental experts say the crisis is being driven by the rising sea levels, changing weather patterns, and activities such as sand mining, destruction of vegetation and poor waste disposal. Conservationist Thomas Emmanuel says these practices weaken natural barriers and leave coastal communities more exposed to powerful waves.
One of them is the coastal road. When people do not do proper EIAs, environmental impact assessment, and they have a construction like that, it's going to trap water, it traps water in the communities and doesn't allow the water go into the ocean. And then the water from the ocean will keep cutting those who are beyond the road, if there are any of them.
Scientists say rising global temperatures are contributing to stronger storm surges and more frequent flooding. While some residents have adopted measures such as tree planting and improving drainage systems, experts say these efforts require stronger government support to be effective. Suleiman Aribabu, head of the Environmental Justice and Sustainable Development Program, says public awareness must be backed by investment and sustainable policies.
It's not in the esoteric realm, it's in the physical realm. Don't build here, don't block this drain, don't litter, those things that we're not so. Don't cut down the trees, don't destroy the forest, don't destroy the mangrove. We've failed in those things.
Environmentalists warn that without urgent action, more communities could face displacement and economic hardship. The warning comes as Nigeria's 2026 flood outlook identifies 33 states and the Federal Capital Territory as being at high risk of flooding, with more than 14,000 communities across 266 local government areas facing potential threats if preventive measures are not taken. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The appointment of E.D. Mofal as Chief Justice of the Gambia has sparked a constitutional battle, with the Gambia Bar Association taking the matter to the Supreme Court. The association argues that the appointment may not have complied with constitutional requirements governing the office of Chief Justice, insisting its legal challenge is aimed at defending the rule of law and preserving judicial independence, not the individual appointed. To examine the legal and constitutional issues at stake, we are first joined by Abdullahi Fati, Secretary General of the Gambia Bar Association.
Chief Justice is the most senior lawyer in the jurisdiction and occupies the highest judicial office. Not only is the Chief Justice the head of the judiciary, but he's also the head of the Supreme Court. And therefore, the Supreme Court is vested the power to, for the most part, interpret and enforce provisions of the Constitution. So the Chief Justice, in the exercise of the Chief Justice's judicial powers, yields enormous constitutional powers. And therefore, if there's any question mark regarding the qualifications of any person occupying that office, risks undermine the legitimacy of the office. And it's for that reason the Gambia Bar Association have been convened a general meeting resolved that it is the opinion and nothing more, but it is the strong opinion of the Gambia Bar Association that the person proposed and in this instance ultimately appointed of Chief Justice doesn't satisfy all the requirements of Section 139 sub 2 linked to 139 sub 5 of the Constitution of the Gambia 1995. And for that reason, the bar resorted to seek a determination from the Supreme Court regarding the eligibility and the qualifications of the person appointed as Chief Justice.
In your statement, I read there are other provisions you believe have been breached. Could you please tell our listeners which constitutional provisions you believe were breached in relation to his appointment as well?
The primary issue here for consideration and the issue before the court is only Section 139 for the most part, because if you look at the different requirements under Section 139 sub 2, it is safe to say that Mr. Fall has previously worked as a judge, so those can be discounted. So the primary consideration now would be the 12 years practice before a court of unlimited civil and criminal jurisdiction in a common law country. So that is what is in Section 139 sub 2. But then common law country is defined in the 1997 Constitution of the Gambia. Unlike most Commonwealth countries, it just stops there, a common law country. But for some reason, the drafters of the 1997 Constitution went a bit further to actually define what a common law country is. So in Section 139 sub 5, it defines common law country as a country that is a member of the Commonwealth. So America is not a member of the Commonwealth, so that is 139 sub 5A, also 139 sub 5.1. Then the second limb of it is that a country that is not a member of the Commonwealth, notwithstanding, the National Assembly may pass a special legislation for the purposes of this provision, for the purposes of consideration for this section. The National Assembly may designate a particular country that is not a member of the Commonwealth. So it is the position of the Gambia Bar Association that there is no law in the Gambia passed by the National Assembly giving America that status. So therefore, the question now would be, has the person practiced either in the Gambia or any other common law country as defined by the 1997 Constitution? But I think for the purposes of this dispute, the answer is that Mr. Fall, so far as we are aware, that has practiced not less than 12 years in Gambia, maybe from afar. But it is the position of the Gambia Bar Association that the bar is not privy to any factual or documentary evidence or anything of that nature to support that position.
Mr. Fati, do you feel this is a setback insofar as Gambia's judicial sector is concerned?
Well, it is unprecedented and it is very unfortunate. I am not going to sit here and pretend, as the Secretary General of the Gambia, to pretend that this is normal. This is extraordinary, of the highest proportions. Imagine the Bar Association approaching the same court headed by the Chief Justice to say the bar is challenging the appointment of the head of the judiciary and the head of the Supreme Court. So it is uncharted territory. As far as I'm aware, this has never happened. The Gambia Bar Association wished that this was averted. But I do agree with you that this is uncharted territory. And I'm not going to sit here to say that the bar takes pride in going to the Supreme Court in this manner, because at the end of the day, the Chief Justice appointed is a member of the bar. And we are all in this to ensure that the wheels of justice and the administration and the delivery of justice enhances and there's actual justice to every corner of the Gambia. So either way, whatever the outcome of the Supreme Court decision is, I believe that there is some form of damage, regardless of what outcome.
Finally, Mr. Fati, before I let you go, I mean, of course, the matter is now before the Supreme Court of the Gambia, but my question is, what outcome is the Bar Association seeking from the Supreme Court?
Essentially, the Bar Association relief, the primary relief for the court, is that the appointment is unconstitutional, null and void, because the appointment does not satisfy the constitutional requirements vis-a-vis Section 139. So the bar's position essentially is that since the appointment does not meet the requirements of the Constitution, that the appointment is unconstitutional and therefore unlawful, essentially. And we are seeking the court to make that declaration and to declare that it is null and void. So if the court declares that the appointment is null and void, that means legally it never actually occurred in the first place. So essentially that is what the bar is seeking.
Abdullahi Fati is the Secretary General of the Gambia Bar Association. In the sporting world, let's begin with the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. WAFCON host Morocco finished top of Group A at the 2026 event after a goalless draw with Senegal in Rabat. The draw leaves Morocco unbeaten on 7 points and through to the quarterfinals alongside Algeria, who defeated Kenya 2-0 to finish second. Senegal exited the competition after finishing third with 4 points. Meanwhile, Nigeria finished at Africa's top-performing nation at the Glasgow 2026 Commonwealth Games, winning 24 medals, including 10 gold, to top the continental standings. South Africa placed second among African nations with 28 medals, including 7 gold, while Kenya finished third with 12 medals. Cameroon was fifth, highlighted by Emmanuel Essem's games record in the men's 100 meters. Australia topped the overall medal table ahead of England and Canada as the games concluded in Scotland. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and special thanks to Maldo Diouf and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at WADR English, and stream live at wadr.org. Do join Silvio Drago at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. for the French edition, News in French, Info Chez Vous. But coming up now is Info Check. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. in the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Graft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.